There's a lot of debate about where protest art should live. My opinion is that it should live everywhere. I think it's incredibly powerful. It transforms the landscape. Almost everyone I admire has taken risks to show their commitment to what they really believe in. Protest art absolutely can make a difference. I fell in love with art as a young kid just because I enjoyed the process of translating something I was looking at to a picture on a piece of paper or canvas. But when art really started to take on more meaning for me was when I started to see it as a tool of social commentary. The 80s, when I grew up, there had been a backlash to peace and free love, racism in the South, a very rigid class structure. The Reagan-Thatcher era was about saying unbridled capitalism is the way, and if you can't keep up, then tough luck. Reagan was the villain of the era who had taken money away from social programs and shut unions down, fired union workers who refused to comply. All of these things were incorporated into a lot of the art that I was seeing. Protest, critique, you could phrase it any number of ways, but that really came about for me because of punk rock music. And then later an element of the social commentary within reggae, and then hip hop, very much about criticizing the dominant power structure and racism. Started to look at the way that art could serve ideas for the greater good of the public, or just as a means of saying things are not all right the way they are. And that primarily came from people like Jamie Reed, who did the art for the Sex Pistols, Winston Smith, who did the art for the Dead Kennedys, Raymond Pettibone, who did the art for Black Flag. And then as I became more interested in this idea of protest art, art with a message, I started to notice visual artists like Barbara Kruger, Robbie Canal, pieces from Andy Warhol like the Vote McGovern piece. And I started to look further back at the collage artist John Hartfeld, who was appropriated by the band Discharge, who were very outspoken in their anti-war, pro-working class opinions. Once I got to art college and was surrounded by students from all over the world with a lot of different perspectives, it all began to really snowball. And where I found a convergence between the art world and the world of punk rock, between those two worlds, was with the medium of screen printing, where one could make fine art posters that could also be used as tools for social commentary, for activist movements, and for putting up on the street that would engage directly with the public, people that weren't going to go out of their way to go to a gallery or a museum. Art like that, whether I saw it in a window of a store or on a billboard, on a sticker, on a t-shirt, to me it was an absolutely essential counter-argument to what was going on in the dominant culture. When I first made the Andre the Giant Has a Posse sticker in 1989, it began just as an inside joke with a skateboard friend. And the next thing I knew, people were coming up to me asking me, hey, do you have any of those Andre stickers? And I thought, this is such a stupid, silly sticker. Why would anyone want it? And I realized that when something is mischievous and it's disruptive, and it also seems to be a secret handshake with the right people, people want to know about it. And the more they see it around, the more they assume it must be important. So I became fascinated with spreading something that made people ask questions. questions about the control of public space, questions of was it vandalism, was it connected to a movement, was it connected to a band, a skateboard company. And I studied Heidegger's theory of phenomenology, which is about reawakening a sense of wonder about one's environment. But once I was excited about the mischief of disruption, I wanted to take it in a direction that would be a little bit more serious. And so I evolved it away from the connection to Andre the Giant, the wrestler, and more towards an iconic counterculture, Big Brother is watching you. And that's when I started to incorporate the word obey, largely inspired stylistically by Barbara Kruger and Russian constructivist art, which I thought was some of the most effective art that also many Americans, because of the Cold War, had an automatic fear of. So I knew that it would provoke a reaction. I also think that sometimes it's important to just call out the villains, to pierce the veil. There's a lot of what I would call the cloaking of evil. When you render someone in the style that you see on currency or on a stamp, there's a perceived legitimacy. And sometimes I say, just because the person's presented this way does not mean that they're legitimate or benign. There's a lot of debate about where protest art should live. I've engaged in this debate, but my opinion is that it should live everywhere. There's a McLuhan phrase, the medium is the message, that I believe in strongly. Street art, just by its mere nature, is political. It's an act of defiance done illegally in public space that's often supposed to be controlled by someone, and yet it's been subverted, taken over, detoured, and used by someone else. I think that street art is very potent for that reason, especially when it also, on top of it being disruptive as a technique, has something powerful to say within it. Street art has been and will always be important to me because I think it's incredibly powerful. It transforms the landscape. That being said, street art is also dangerous. I've been arrested 18 times. I've been beaten up by the police. I've been denied my insulin. I'm a type 1 diabetic. I've gotten very sick in jail. So there are risks, but I think that almost everyone I admire has taken risks to show their commitment to what they really believe in. I don't exclusively do street art that's illegal. I do a lot of public art that's murals. I have my clothing line that's a very accessible platform that allows me to connect with people on t-shirts and also generate revenue for charities I believe in. Protest art or art with social commentary can exist in a lot of different ways, but street art is probably the most pure in terms of my belief in empowering people that normally don't consider themselves powerful enough to have a voice. But I believe that if something's worth saying, it's worth saying with style. And this is something that I think is extremely important with art. When I created the Hope poster for Barack Obama, it was just a grassroots tool of activism. It wasn't actually done through the campaign. I did get a sign-off from the campaign that they were okay with me doing it. Prior to doing the Hope poster, most of my work was critical of what people in power were doing. But one of the things I realized is that if you want to change the power structure and not just keep getting the same thing, sometimes it's important to stand by someone who seems like they have the potential to be transformative. And that's what I saw in Barack Obama. So doing the Hope poster, which deracialized Obama using red, white, and blue, patriotic colors, treating him almost like a two-dimensional statue, put on a pedestal metaphorically, with him looking into the distance with a sense of vision, suggesting that he had his eye on a future the rest of us were not yet able to see. To me, this was a logical way to try to encourage people to take an interest in Obama, to make them intrigued. Political imagery in the United States, it has been so formulaic for so long, yet I wanted to make sure that the Hope poster was different enough from the usual political communication to stand out, but also safe enough to not alienate middle of the road that needed to convert to voting for Obama. The poster series that I'm probably most proud of, because it wasn't attached to someone famous, is the We the People series that I made for the first Women's March right after Trump was elected. I decided that it was important to make posters that represented the groups who'd been attacked as equally human and equally American. So I worked with photographers who had shot subjects who were Black, Latino, and Muslim, and I created 3 images. I believe that because Trump has basically hijacked most of the media, that a lot of the people that would like to make a counter-argument haven't had an opportunity to do so yet. So I want to create a tool for them. And once that tool was created, it achieved not only what I was hoping for, but 20 times over. From the moment I got into protest art and music as a teenager, I think that many of those ideas that the first thing that one needs to do to make a difference is to actually stand up and speak out. That's been retained from the 80s to now. However, I think I've become a lot more sophisticated in my understanding of politics and human nature. I still think that it's important for me to be a unique voice artistically and to be willing to go against what is happening in the mainstream in ways that could inspire other people to do the same. I'm a punk protester at heart. It's never left me. I can't just sit by idly while injustice is always happening, no matter how comfortable I've become, very fortunately, in my career. But as I am getting older, I hope I'm aging disgracefully.